First Officer Zerl Tapik hated council meetings. Absolutely positively hated them. As the blue-skinned Verdani adjusted his formal regalia for the third time, he stared at the massive doors of the grand chamber with the sort of disdain usually reserved for finding something unpleasant stuck to the bottom of one's footwear. The Galactic Council sessions were nothing but long-winded speeches by species who loved to hear themselves talk, followed by votes that had been predetermined through backroom deals weeks earlier. "Remind me why we are here again," Zerl asked, his aide Melna, who was busy organizing data tablets with practiced efficiency. "Because Admiral Vexager ordered you to represent the Verdani Military Intelligence Division while she conveniently developed that diplomatic illness," Melna replied without looking up. "And because the humans have submitted another appeal." Zerl groaned. "The humans? Again? Don't they ever give up?" "Apparently not. This is their 57th appeal in the past 30 standard cycles. 57th. By the void, what makes them think this one will be any different?" Zerl straightened his collar. "Their homeworld is classified as a Class 4 quarantine zone for good reason." Milena finally looked up, her 4 eyes blinking in sequence. "They are persistent. You have to give them that." "Persistent like a parasite," Zerl muttered. "Every other species accepted their assessment and classification. Only the humans keep fighting it." The enormous doors swung open, and the delegates from 37 spacefaring civilizations began filing into the chamber. Zerl took a deep breath and plastered a diplomatic smile on his face. Time to endure another 8 hours of bureaucratic torture. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council was designed to impress, with its soaring crystalline dome capturing the light of 3 suns and refracting it into patterns across the circular floor. Species from across the known galaxy took their assigned seats, a riot of different biologies and cultures somehow coexisting in one political body. High Counselor Afralum, a willowy sentia with translucent skin that showed her circulatory system, stood at the central podium. Her melodious voice cut through the murmurs of the assembled delegates. "Esteemed representatives, we convene today to address matters of interstellar significance," she began with practiced formality. "Before we commence with our scheduled agenda, I must acknowledge the petition submitted by the human delegation requesting yet another appeal of their quarantine status." A ripple of exasperation moved through the chamber. Several delegates made their species equivalent of eye-rolling gestures. "The humans have been allocated the standard 3 minutes to present new evidence for consideration," Counselor Loom continued. "Ambassador Jackson, you may approach the forum." From the observers' gallery, a single figure rose and made his way to the speaking platform. Even from across the chamber, Zerl could see the tension in the human's shoulders. Ambassador Derek Jackson wore the simple blue uniform that all humans were required to don when leaving their solar system, a visible reminder of their restricted status. "Distinguished members of the Council," Jackson began, his voice steady despite the collective dismissal he surely felt from the Assembly. "Humanity thanks you for this opportunity to present our case once more." "Here we go again," whispered a Gronth delegate behind Zerl. Same speech, different day. But Jackson surprised them. "I stand before you not to repeat the arguments you have heard before. Instead, I bring empirical data from independent sources regarding the incident at Proxima Station." That got Zerl's attention. The Proxima incident was the very reason humans were under quarantine in the first place. 70 years ago, the first contact between humanity and the wider galactic community had gone catastrophically wrong. The details were classified at the highest level, but the official story was that humans had demonstrated uncontrollable aggressive tendencies and technological misuse, resulting in the destruction of a diplomatic station and the deaths of 23 alien representatives. "The Council has already reviewed all evidence from the Proxima incident," Counselor Loom stated firmly. "Unless you have new information, Ambassador." "We do." Jackson activated a holographic display. "These are security recordings recovered from Proxima Station's tertiary backup systems, preserved in a debris field that wasn't thoroughly searched during the initial investigation." The chamber fell silent as grainy footage began to play. Zerl leaned forward, his antenna twitching with interest. The footage showed the diplomatic chamber of Proxima Station, with humans and various alien representatives engaged in what appeared to be cordial discussions. Then, a group of figures in unmarked environmental suits entered the chamber. They weren't human, their proportions were all wrong. The newcomers raised weapons and chaos erupted. "Stop this immediately." demanded Councillor Greg, a massive reptilian from the Drax hegemony, rising to his feet. This footage is clearly fabricated. The authentication codes are included in the metadata. Jackson replied calmly, "Your own technical experts can verify its authenticity. Even if authentic, this changes nothing," hissed Representative Valshar of the Otharian Dominion. "Humans still demonstrated their dangerous nature in the subsequent conflicts." "Because we were defending ourselves," Jackson countered, "after being framed for an attack we did not commit." The chamber erupted into overlapping arguments. Councillor Loom struck her ceremonial staff against the floor, the resonating boom silencing the delegates. "The council will take this evidence under advisement," she declared. "Until verification is complete, the current status of humanity remains unchanged." This session will recess for 1 standard hour while the Security Council reviews this footage. As the delegates dispersed for the break, Zerl found himself oddly troubled. In his position with military intelligence, he'd read the classified reports on the Proxima incident. There had always been inconsistencies, details that didn't quite add up. But questioning the official narrative was politically dangerous, especially when powerful council members like the Otharians and the Drax seemed personally invested in keeping humans contained. "You look concerned," Mela observed as they moved to a private alcove. "Something doesn't feel right," Zerl admitted. "Why would anyone fake an attack and blame humans? They were newcomers to the galactic stage, with minimal influence. Perhaps because they were unknown and unpredictable," Melna suggested. "The classification reports cite their rapid technological advancement and biological predisposition toward conflict as reasons for concern." "Yes, but every predator species in the Council faced similar scrutiny initially. None were placed under such severe restrictions." Zerl tapped his claws against the wall. "I need to make a call." While the Council deliberated, Zerl slipped away to a secure communication chamber. He entered his highest clearance codes and connected to the Verdani military archives. "This is First Officer Tapik. I need all files related to the Proxima incident, specifically any analysis of debris field search patterns." The system processed his request, and moments later his screen filled with classified documents. Zerl scanned them quickly, his eyes widening. "Just as I suspected," he muttered. The search was incomplete. Entire sections of the debris field were marked as analyzed without any record of actual investigation. "Accessing those files without Security Council authorization is a violation of protocol," came a cold voice from behind him. Zerl turned to find Representative Valshar standing in the doorway, his pale, elongated features arranged in a look of smug satisfaction. "I have clearance to access these files," Zerl replied evenly, though his heart was pounding. "Clearance? Yes. But proper authorization for this specific inquiry?" Valshar glided into the room. The Proxima incident was resolved. "The human quarantine serves the greater stability of the galactic community. Why risk disrupting that balance? Because if we were wrong about the humans, we have unjustly constrained an entire species for 7 decades. Valshar's lipless mouth twitched in what might have been amusement. "Her species' moral compunctions are charming, Tapik, but sometimes galactic stability requires pragmatic decisions." "You mean lies." "I mean whatever preserves the peace." Valshar moved closer. "The humans are dangerous, regardless of what happened at Proxima. Their history is drenched in warfare. Their advancement from primitive technology to space travel occurred at an unprecedented rate. Left unchecked, how long before they dominate the Council itself?" "That sounds more like fear than pragmatism," Zerl countered, "and I'm not the only one who's had doubts. Admiral Vexer sent me here because she suspected something might happen today." Valshar's eyes narrowed. "Be careful, First Officer. Careers have been destroyed over less." Before Zerl could respond, the station's communication system chimed. "All delegates, please return to the Council chamber immediately. The Security Council has reached a determination regarding the human evidence." Valshar gave Zerl one last warning look before gliding out of the room. Zerl quickly downloaded the files he'd found to a secure data crystal and tucked it into his uniform before following. The Council chamber was buzzing with tension when Zerl retook his seat. Ambassador Jackson stood rigidly at the speaking platform, his face impressively neutral despite what must have been agonizing suspense. Councillor Loom took the central podium, flanked by the 7 members of the Security Council. Her expression gave nothing away. After careful analysis, the Security Council has determined that the footage presented by the human delegation shows significant signs of tampering and cannot be authenticated at this time, she announced. Jackson's composure finally cracked. That's impossible. The data was preserved in its original state. Our technical experts have identified multiple inconsistencies, stated Security Counselor Drav, a cybernetically enhanced Covarian. The metadata appears artificially aged, and several frames show evidence of quantum reconstruction, because they were partially damaged and required restoration. Jackson protested, but the core footage is authentic. The Council's decision is final. Counselor Loom declared, the human appeal is denied. The Class 4 quarantine status remains in effect. As mutters of approval rippled through the chamber, Zerl noticed something peculiar. Vilshar and Counselor Drab exchanged a subtle gesture, one that Zerl recognized from his intelligence training as a signal used by the Consortium, a shadow organization rumored to manipulate galactic politics for profit. This is a travesty of justice. Jackson's voice rose, cutting through the murmurs. For 70 years, humanity has endured restrictions that have stunted our growth, prevented us from defending our interests, and forced us to beg for basic rights that every other spacefaring species enjoys. Ambassador, control yourself, warned Counselor Loom. Such outbursts only reinforce concerns about human volatility. Volatility. Jackson laughed bitterly. You have left us no choice but volatility. We have followed every rule, jumped through every hoop, presented evidence after evidence, only to be dismissed without fair consideration. He straightened his shoulders, and something in his demeanor changed, a subtle shift that sent a chill down Zerl's spine. The human delegation formally withdraws from this proceeding, Jackson announced, and I am authorized to inform the Council that as of this moment, humanity no longer recognizes the authority of the Galactic Council over Earth or any human settlements. The chamber exploded into chaos. Counselor Loom repeatedly struck her staff against the floor, but the delegates ignored the call for order. You cannot simply withdraw from Council authority, bellowed Counselor Grek. The quarantine is enforceable by the combined fleet. You are welcome to try enforcing it, Jackson replied with alarming calmness. But I should warn you, humanity has not been idle these 70 years. Is that a threat, Ambassador? Valshar's voice cut through the din. It's a statement of fact. We hoped for justice today. We came prepared for its absence. Jackson turned to address the entire chamber. For those who have been our quiet allies, who recognize the injustice of our situation, thank you. When the dust settles, remember that we sought peace first. With that, he stepped down from the platform and walked toward the exit, ignoring the shouted questions and demands to stop. Detain him, ordered Valshar, and security personnel moved to block Jackson's path. The ambassador sighed, then tapped his wrist communicator. Oversight protocol Jackson Omega-7, confirm. For a moment, nothing happened. Then every light in the chamber flickered, and a massive holographic display appeared above the central podium, showing hundreds of vessels appearing from warp around the Council station. What is this? Demanded Counselor Loom, her composure finally breaking. The human fleet, Jackson replied simply. Hidden in plain sight for decades, operating under false registries, foreign flags, and shell corporations. While you restricted our official navy to 20 outdated vessels, we built a shadow fleet. Every merchant ship that delivered your goods, every mining vessel that extracted your resources, every independent contractor that transported your delegates, many were ours, waiting for this day. The security personnel hesitated, looking to their commanders for orders. You are bluffing, Valshar hissed. Those ships would have been detected. By whom? The corporations that control your scanner networks. Humans may have been restricted, but human credits spent just as well as anyone else's. Jackson smiled thinly. It's amazing what people will overlook when properly compensated. Zerl felt a creeping admiration for the audacity of it. While the Council had focused on containing official human military growth, they'd completely missed the economic infiltration happening right under their noses. This is an act of war, declared Counselor Grek. No, Jackson countered. This is an act of independence. We have no interest in conflict with the Council or its member species. We simply refuse to remain under unjust restrictions any longer. He turned to the stunned delegates. The human vessels will ensure my safe passage back to Earth. We will be establishing our own trade agreements, alliances, and diplomatic relations outside Council oversight. Any aggression against human interests will be met with appropriate response. The combined fleet will never allow this. Velshar stated coldly. You will be destroyed before you reach the nearest warp point. The combined fleet is currently experiencing technical difficulties. Jackson replied. It seems their navigation and weapons systems are all simultaneously undergoing unexpected software updates. Curious timing, isn't it? A communications officer rushed to Counselor Loom, whispering urgently in her ear. Her translucent skin paled further. He's telling the truth, she announced, her voice hollow. The combined fleet is reporting critical system malfunctions across all vessels. Another benefit of having your ships serviced by companies that were secretly human-owned, Jackson explained. Backdoor access codes are quite useful. Zurl couldn't help but laugh, earning shocked looks from those around him. You have to appreciate the irony, he said to no one in particular. We were so concerned about human aggression that we never considered human cunning. Jackson gave Zurl an appreciative nod before addressing the council one final time. We will transmit our terms for normalized relations within the standard day. I suggest you give them serious consideration. Good day, Counselor. This time, no one tried to stop him as he walked out of the chamber. As the doors closed behind Jackson, the council erupted into panicked arguments. Accusations flew, blame was shifted, and threats were made. Through it all, Zurl remained in his seat, turning the data crystal in his hand. What will you do with that? Melna asked quietly. Zurl considered the question. The crystal contained evidence that might prove the humans had been framed all those years ago. If true, it meant certain council members had perpetrated a massive injustice, one that had now backfired spectacularly. I think, he said slowly, that I will be requesting a meeting with Admiral Vexer, and then perhaps with the human delegation. That could be seen as treason against the council. Melna warned. The council, Zurl replied, watching Velshar and his allies huddled in urgent conversation, is not the same thing as justice, and I believe the galaxy is about to change dramatically. Outside the council station, the human fleet maintained its position, a silent statement of power that had been hidden for decades. The chains had been shattered, and the galaxy indeed trembled, not at human aggression but at human patience, planning, and the terrifying efficiency with which they had orchestrated their liberation. As Zurl left the chamber, he heard Counselor Loom frantically ordering emergency sessions and crisis responses. But he suspected it was too late. The humans had outplayed them all, turning 70 years of restriction into preparation for this very day. And somewhere on Earth, Zurl imagined, humans were celebrating their long-awaited independence, raising glasses to the success of the most patient revolution in galactic history. The real question now was, what would they do with their freedom? In the days that followed, that question would become the most important in the galaxy, because a species with the patience to endure 70 years of injustice, the cunning to build a hidden fleet under the watchful eyes of their oppressors, and the restraint to reveal their power without immediately using it destructively, that was a species unlike any the galaxy had seen before. And Zurl, despite his initial prejudice, found himself strangely looking forward to what would come next. As he made his way to his ship, he received an unexpected communication, a simple text message from an unknown source. For those willing to acknowledge past mistakes, humanity remembers its friends. We would welcome a conversation. First Officer Tapik. The truth about Proxima deserves to be known. Zurl smiled. Perhaps the humans were right to break their chains. Perhaps it was time for the entire galaxy to be liberated from old lies. His decision made, he changed course for the human diplomatic vessel. The galaxy was trembling indeed, but perhaps it was trembling with possibility rather than fear. The human diplomatic vessel, Audacity, was nothing like Zurl expected. Having spent his career studying threat assessments of quarantine species, he'd anticipated something utilitarian and aggressive, all hard angles and weapons ports poorly disguised as sensor arrays. What greeted him instead was an elegant ship with sweeping lines that somehow managed to appear both welcoming and formidable. Verdani Shuttle, you are cleared for docking in Bay 3, came the calm voice over the comm. Ambassador Jackson is expecting you. Melna, who had insisted on accompanying him despite the potential career suicide, fidgeted with her data pad. I have reviewed all Verdani intelligence on human diplomatic protocols. We should address the ambassador as Your Excellency and avoid showing our teeth, as humans consider it a sign of aggression. Zurl snorted. After what I just witnessed in the council chamber, I think formality is the least of our concerns. Besides, humans show their teeth when they are pleased. That's called smiling. That can't be right. Melna objected, her 4 eyes blinking in confusion. What kind of species displays a threat gesture to indicate happiness? The kind that hid a fleet in plain sight for 70 years while building an economic empire right under the council's collective noses, Zerl replied dryly. I'm beginning to think everything we thought we knew about humans requires reassessment. Their shuttle glided into the docking bay, which was busy with activity. Human crew members moved with purpose, some giving curious glances at the Verdani craft. None appeared particularly threatening, though Zerla noticed they all wore subtle sidearms, a pragmatic precaution given recent events. When the docking procedure completed, Zerl hesitated before the airlock. Last chance to turn back. Malna, once we step onto that ship, we are officially breaking council directives. With respect, sir. The council appeared to be breaking apart quite effectively without our help. Malna straightened her uniform. Besides, I have already copied the data crystal's contents to my personal secure server. If we disappear, the information will automatically release to 30 independent news outlets. Zerl stared at his aide in surprise. That's impressively devious. I didn't spend 6 years in military intelligence just filing reports, she replied with a hint of smugness. Shall we? The airlock cycled open, revealing Ambassador Jackson himself waiting to greet them, flanked by 2 aides. In person, the human appeared less imposing than he had in the council chamber, shorter than Zerl, with silver-streaked dark hair and lines around his eyes that the Verdani officer recognized as signs of age in the human species. First Officer Tepik, Jackson extended his hand in the human greeting gesture. Thank you for coming. I must admit I didn't expect any council representatives to accept our invitation so quickly. Zerl completed the handshake, careful to apply the correct pressure. I'm not here as a council representative, Ambassador. Consider this a personal inquiry. Even more intriguing. Jackson smiled, that peculiar baring of teeth that Mela flinched at. Please follow me to somewhere more comfortable. I imagine we have much to discuss. They were led not to a formal meeting room but to what appeared to be an observation lounge. One entire wall was transparent, offering a spectacular view of the council station and the human fleet surrounding it. Refreshments had been prepared with separate selections clearly labeled for Verdani biochemistry. You have come prepared, Zerl noted, selecting a traditional Verdani stimulant beverage. We have spent decades learning everything about council species, Jackson replied, taking a seat. Necessity is quite the motivator, as is injustice, it seems. Zerl removed the data crystal from his uniform and placed it on the table between them. This contains evidence suggesting the investigation into the Proxima incident was deliberately compromised. Search patterns missed entire sections of the debris field, the very sections where your recovered footage was allegedly found. Jackson didn't immediately reach for the crystal. Instead, he studied Zerl with a thoughtful expression. Why are you doing this? First Officer, your career, possibly your freedom, is at stake. Because 70 years ago, someone framed your species for a crime and condemned you to isolation based on a lie. That offends me both professionally and personally. Zerl's antennae twitched with emotion. I want to know why, and I want to know how deep this deception goes. The ambassador nodded slowly. I think we can help each other. He touched a control panel and a holographic display sprang to life in the center of the table. What I'm about to show you never made it to the council floor. Our intelligence suggested that presenting it would have led to immediate dismissal and possible detention. The hologram showed a complex web of financial transactions, corporate entities, and political connections. At its center were 3 familiar names: Valshar of the Ultharian Dominion, Councillor Grek of the Drax Hegemony, and Councillor Drav of the Kovarian Cybercracy. The consortium, Zerl breathed. It's real. Very real, Jackson confirmed, and very interested in keeping humanity contained. We have spent decades tracing their activities. The Proxima attack was just the beginning. Every time a human colony attempted to expand beyond our quarantine zone, mysterious pirate attacks occurred. Every trade agreement we negotiated within our allowed parameters suddenly fell through due to security concerns. But why target humans specifically? Mellon asked, leaning forward to study the data. What threat could a newcomer species possibly pose? A new figure entered the observation lounge, a human female with dark skin and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Because we were the ultimate market disruptors," she said without preamble. "Admiral Elena Vostok, Human Defense Forces." She nodded to Jackson. "The fleet is secured, Ambassador. No Council vessels have attempted approach." "Thank you, Admiral." Jackson gestured to an empty seat. "Please join us. Your perspective would be valuable here." Admiral Vostok took a position where she could watch both the Verdani visitors and the view outside. The consortium isn't just a political entity, it's an economic cartel. They control everything from faster-than-light drive components to medical supplies throughout Council space. Their profit margins rely on technological stagnation and controlled advancement. "And humans are naturally innovative," Zerl suggested, the pieces starting to fit together. "Pathologically so," Vostok agreed with a grim smile. "Our initial technological assessment upon first contact showed we had developed certain technologies along completely different paths than the Council standard. Our computational systems, in particular, were considered primitive in some ways but startlingly advanced in others." "Quantum processing," Melna said suddenly. "Human computers were the first to achieve stable quantum processing without covariant cybernetic interfaces." "Exactly." Jackson tapped the display, highlighting a section of the financial web. Within days of that discovery becoming known, the consortium began moving massive resources. They couldn't risk a species that might develop technologies outside their control. The Proxima incident was manufactured less than 3 weeks later. Zerl felt cold anger building in his chest. So the attack was never about fear of human aggression, it was about market control. "The oldest motive in the galaxy," Admiral Vostok said bitterly. "Follow the money. Always follow the money. But how did you manage all this?" Zerl gestured toward the window, where the human fleet hung in silent testimony to decades of secret preparation. The monitoring of human activity was supposed to be comprehensive. Ambassador Jackson exchanged a look with Admiral Vostok, and then shrugged. "We simply used the Council's prejudice against us. You expected violent rebellion, dramatic escape attempts, overt military buildup, so that's what we let you see. Enough small violations to keep your attention focused exactly where we wanted it. While your real efforts went into economic infiltration and soft power," Zerl concluded, impressed despite himself. "We established shell corporations registered to non-human species who had grievances with the Council system. We funded independence movements on outer colonies. We provided better deals than consortium companies, building loyalty and networks." Admiral Vostok's pride was evident. The ships out there, most were built in shipyards owned by supposedly independent contractors, who happened to be secretly funded by human capital and staffed by human-trained engineers. "The ultimate long con," Jackson added. "While the Council watched our hands for weapons, we were building an economic empire with resources they never realized we controlled." Melna looked troubled. "This revelation will destabilize the entire Council. Dozens of systems rely on the current political structure, which is why we haven't broadcast the truth to the galaxy," Jackson said. "Yet, we are offering the Council leadership a chance to negotiate a transition, one that acknowledges past wrongs without tearing everything down." "Some would say you are being surprisingly merciful," Zerl observed. Admiral Vostok's expression hardened. "Don't mistake pragmatism for mercy. First Officer, we could bring the consortium and its puppets down tomorrow with what we know, but the resulting chaos would harm trillions of innocent beings who had nothing to do with our quarantine. Besides," Jackson added, "revenge is emotionally satisfying but strategically limiting. We want a seat at the table, not to flip the table over." A communication chime interrupted them. Admiral Vostok touched her earpiece, listened briefly, then nodded to Jackson. "It seems the Council has called an emergency session," she said, "and they have specifically requested human representation." "That was faster than expected," Jackson remarked, standing. "First Officer Tapik, would you and your aide accompany us? Having a respected Verdani intelligence officer present might prove useful." Zerl hesitated only briefly before nodding. "I'm already implicated by coming here, might as well see this through to its conclusion. Fair warning," Admiral Vostok said as they moved toward the door. "The Valshar and his allies won't go down without a fight. They have contingencies within contingencies." "So do we," Jackson assured her with a confidence that Zerl found both reassuring and slightly terrifying. The journey back to the Council station was tense, with security protocols significantly heightened. Zerl noted the increased presence of Drax and Oltharian security forces, species loyal to Councillor Grek and Representative Alsher. They are positioning for a show of force, he murmured to Jackson as they approached the council chamber. Let them, the ambassador replied quietly. Appearances are all they have left. The grand chamber had been rearranged. Instead of the usual circular arrangement with the High Councillor's podium at center, a rectangular negotiation table now dominated the space. On one side sat the Security Council members, including Velshar, Grek and Drav. On the other side, 7 empty chairs awaited the human delegation. High Councillor Loom stood as they entered. Ambassador Jackson, we appreciate your willingness to meet on such short notice. The pursuit of peace is always worth making time for, Jackson replied smoothly, taking his place at the table. Admiral Vostok and their aides filled the remaining human seats, while Zerl and Melna were directed to observer positions nearby. Councillor Loom remained standing. This emergency session has been called to address the unprecedented situation regarding the human delegation's declaration of independence and the presence of an unauthorized fleet in council space. A fleet that has taken no hostile action, Jackson pointed out, despite having every capability to do so. Your restraint is noted, Loom acknowledged, though the method of your demonstration remains deeply concerning. Valshar leaned forward, his pale fingers steepled. Let us dispense with diplomatic niceties, Ambassador. You have violated council law, bypassed security protocols, and effectively held this station hostage. What prevents us from simply arresting you and your entire delegation right now? Admiral Vostok smiled thinly. Apart from the 200 ships outside with weapons locked on this station's critical systems, perhaps the fact that human-owned corporations currently control 43% of the Council's supply chains for essential goods. A murmur of shock ran through the observers' gallery. This was apparently news to most delegates. A preposterous claim. Councillor Grek growled. Is it? Jackson activated a data pad. Drax Pharmaceuticals imports 80% of its raw materials through Centauri Shipping Consortium, a human-controlled company. Your home system would run out of critical medications within weeks if those shipments stopped. Grek's scaled skin darkened with anger, but he remained silent. This is blackmail, Valshar hissed. This is leverage, Jackson corrected, and we are prepared to use it, not out of malice, but because 70 years of playing by your rules got us nowhere. What are your terms? Councillor Loom asked, cutting through the tension with her practical question. Jackson nodded appreciatively at her directness. First, an immediate end to the quarantine restrictions on human worlds and colonies. Second, a full, independent investigation into the Proxima incident, with evidence from all parties made public. Third, human representation on the Council proportional to our economic and territorial presence. Impossible, Valshar declared. No species joins the Council without at least a century of probationary status. That rule, Admiral Vostok said pointedly, was created 50 years ago, well after our quarantine began, specifically to prevent human eligibility. Beljar's expression didn't change, but his eyes darted briefly toward Councillor Drav, a tella that Zerl caught immediately. Something was happening beneath the surface here. Even if we accepted these terms, Councillor Drav spoke for the first time, his cybernetic voice modulator giving his words a metallic quality. What assurance do we have that humanity won't use its surprising capabilities to dominate Council proceedings? The same assurance any species provides, Jackson replied. Mutual interest in galactic stability. We have no desire to rule the Council, only to participate in it fairly. Councillor Loom held up a hand for silence as the debate threatened to intensify. I propose a brief recess for the Council to confer privately. Of course, Jackson agreed. We will await your response. As the Council members withdrew to a side chamber, Zerl approached the human delegation. Something's wrong. Valshar and Drav are too calm. They should be panicking if their consortium activities are about to be exposed. You noticed that too? Admiral Vostok frowned. They are planning something. Our ships report no unusual activity from the Council fleet. One of the human aides reported after checking a communication device, though there has been increased shuttle traffic to and from the Oltharian diplomatic vessel. Jackson's expression grew concerned. Check our corporate monitoring systems. If they can't hit us militarily, they might try to undermine our economic position. The aide worked frantically at her datapad, then looked up with alarm. "Sir, we are detecting coordinated trading activity across multiple exchanges. Someone's dumping shares in all our front companies simultaneously. They are trying to trigger a market crash." Admiral Vorstock realized, if our companies lose value rapidly enough, automated trading systems will sell off holdings to prevent further losses, and our leverage evaporates. Jackson concluded grimly. They must have prepared this contingency long ago, just waiting for us to reveal ourselves. Zerl's mind raced. You need to counter-purchase. Stabilize the prices before the automatic systems kick in. With what resources? The Admiral asked. Our liquid assets are already committed to maintaining the fleet and supply chains. A moment of clarity struck Zerl. The Verdani Sovereign Fund. Melina gasped. Sir, you can't possibly. Why, absolutely can. Zerl turned to his aide. Access my emergency authorization codes. The Verdani Military Intelligence Division has discretionary investment authority during crisis situations. This stretches the definition of crisis beyond recognition, Melina protested, though she was already inputting commands into her datapad. A potential collapse of galactic trade networks qualifies, Zerl retorted. Besides, it's a sound investment. Human companies have outperformed council averages for decades. Jackson looked at Zerl with newfound respect. Why are you helping us, First Officer? Because the consortium has been manipulating my government just as they have manipulated everyone else, Zerl replied, and because sometimes the right thing and the strategic thing are the same thing. The council members returned before they could finalize their countermeasures. Councillor Loom took her position, but it was Valshar who spoke. After careful consideration, the council rejects the human terms as presented, he announced with barely concealed satisfaction. Furthermore, we have evidence that human economic activities throughout council space have violated numerous regulations. As we speak, trading authorities are freezing assets associated with suspected human-controlled entities pending investigation. Jackson's face remained impassive, though Zerl could sense his tension. That would be a significant escalation. Representative Valshar. Perhaps, Valshar conceded with a cold smile. But the council must protect its economic stability against hidden manipulation. I'm sure you understand. Before Jackson could respond, Zerl stood up. Point of order, Councillor Loom. As representative of the Verdani Military Intelligence Division, I request speaking privileges. Loom appeared startled but nodded. Granted, First Officer Tapik. Zerl stepped forward, conscious of the hundreds of eyes on him. The Verdani government has evidence pertinent to these proceedings. Specifically evidence regarding the true nature of the Proxima incident and subsequent manipulation of council policy. Valshar's composure cracked slightly. The Verdani have no standing in this specific negotiation. On the contrary, Zerl continued smoothly, as victims of deliberate misinformation that affected our voting and policy positions for 7 decades, we have every right to present evidence of such deception. He activated a holographic projector, displaying the contents of his data crystal for all to see. These records show conclusively that the initial investigation of the Proxima incident deliberately avoided areas of the debris field that might have contradicted the official narrative. Furthermore, subsequent council restrictions on humanity were orchestrated by a group of officials with direct financial interests in maintaining technological control over specific industries. The chamber erupted in chaos. Delegates demanded to see the evidence. Security personnel looked to their commanders for orders, and in the midst of it all, Councillor Loom struggled to maintain order. This is outrageous, Councillor Grek bellowed. The Verdani officer is clearly compromised. Am I? Zerl countered, his voice carrying over the din. Then explain why your personal holding company purchased options to acquire human technology patents just days before the Proximal attack, patents that would have revolutionized the cybernetic interface industry controlled by your allies. Dead silence fell across the chamber. Even Valshar seemed momentarily speechless. How did you know that? Ambassador Jackson whispered to Zerl. I didn't, Zerl admitted quietly. But guilty parties always react to specific accusations. Look at his face. Indeed, Councillor Grek's expression had shifted from outrage to calculation, the look of someone determining how much others knew and how best to salvage the situation. Councillor Loom struck her staff against the floor 3 times, the resonating boom commanding attention. These are serious allegations that require thorough investigation, I propose an immediate suspension of all punitive economic measures, while an independent commission reviews both the Proxima evidence and these new claims of conspiracy. Suspension is insufficient. Admiral Vostok stated firmly, the damage to human interests has already begun. We require immediate reversal of any asset freezes and trading restrictions. Velshar started to object, but Councillor Loom raised her hand. The Admiral's point is valid. If these allegations prove true, the Council will have committed a grave injustice. If they prove false, temporary economic accommodation costs us little. She turned to address the entire chamber. I hereby invoke Emergency Protocol 7, assuming direct executive authority for 48 standard hours. During this period, the following directives will apply. All economic sanctions against human interests are suspended. The human fleet will maintain position but power down weapons systems, and a joint investigative team comprising members from neutral species will examine all evidence regarding both the Proxima incident and alleged consortium activities. Velshar rose to his feet. This exceeds your authority, High Counselor. Check the charter. Representative. Loom replied coolly. During classified Level 1 security threats, the High Counselor may act without Security Council approval. A potential conspiracy reaching to the highest levels of Council leadership certainly qualifies. The gallery erupted in applause, stunning both the human delegation and the Council members. After decades of carefully managed information, it seemed many delegates had harbored their own doubts about the human quarantine. Well played, Jackson murmured to Zerl, though I suspect Velshar and his allies won't give up so easily. Of course not, Zerl agreed, but they have lost the advantage of secrecy. The consortium thrives in shadows. Daylight is their greatest weakness. Over the next several hours, events moved with dizzying speed. The Verdani Sovereign Fund's strategic purchases stabilized the human corporate network before serious damage could occur. Malinar coordinated with the human delegation to secure and distribute the evidence regarding the Proxima incident to all Council species. And most dramatically, 3 junior members of the Ultharian Diplomatic Corps defected, bringing with them internal communications that further implicated Velshar in the conspiracy. By the time the emergency session reconvened, the balance of power had shifted dramatically. Velshar, Grek, and Drov found themselves isolated, with former allies distancing themselves as quickly as possible. Councillor Loom, looking both exhausted and resolute, called the chamber to order. The preliminary findings of the investigative team confirmed significant irregularities in both the Proxima investigation and subsequent Council decisions regarding humanity. While the full review will take time, there is sufficient evidence to act now. She turned to the human delegation. Ambassador Jackson, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I extend a formal apology for the injustice done to your species. Effective immediately, all quarantine restrictions are lifted, and humanity is granted provisional Council membership, with full review of permanent status to be completed within 1 standard year. Jackson bowed his head in acknowledgement. The human government accepts this apology in these terms. We look forward to working with all Council species as equals and partners. As for the matter of the consortium, Loom continued, her gaze sweeping to Velshar and his allies, those implicated will be removed from their positions pending full investigation and potential criminal charges. Security personnel moved toward the accused Council members. Velshar looked around desperately, then fixed his gaze on Jackson. This isn't over, he hissed. You have no idea what forces you are challenging. Perhaps not, Jackson replied evenly. But we have spent 70 years learning patience and planning. I like our odds. As Velshar was escorted from the chamber, Zerl turned to Jackson. What happens now? Your species has effectively upended the galactic order in a single day. Now comes the hard part, Jackson said with a tired smile, building something better in its place. Admiral Vostok nodded. The fleet will be integrated into legitimate defense forces. Our corporations will operate openly. And most importantly, human innovation will finally be allowed to benefit all species, not just ourselves. You are being remarkably magnanimous for a people who were wronged for 7 decades, Zerl observed. Don't mistake pragmatism for magnanimity, Jackson echoed the Admiral's earlier words. A peaceful, prosperous galaxy is in everyone's interest, including ours. Especially ours. As delegates began approaching the human delegation with congratulations and partnership offers, Melep pulled Zerl aside. Sir, Admiral Vexor is requesting an immediate report. What exactly should I tell her? Zerl watched as Jackson skillfully navigated the diplomatic overtures, somehow managing to appear both gracious in victory and humble in vindication. The humans had orchestrated the most spectacular political and economic revolution in Council history, all without firing a shot. Tell her, Zerl said finally, that the galaxy has changed forever, and that the Verdani would be wise to position themselves as friends of humanity. Is that your professional assessment, sir? No, Zerl admitted with a smile. That's my personal one. Professionally, I'd say we just witnessed the most patient revenge ever executed, and the most merciful. As the council chamber buzzed with activity, Zerl could almost feel the old order dissolving around him. The chains that had bound humanity had indeed shattered, and in their breaking, had revealed the chains that had bound all species to the consortium's manipulations. The galaxy trembled not with fear but with possibility. And Zerl, despite his years of skepticism about humans, found himself looking forward to what came next. A species with the patience to endure 70 years of injustice, the cunning to build a hidden empire right under their oppressors' noses, and the wisdom to use their victory for something beyond mere revenge. It was a species worth knowing better. First Officer Tapik, Jackson called, waving him over. The Arcturian ambassador has an interesting proposal for a joint Verdani human research initiative. I think you will want to hear this. Zerl moved to join the conversation, realizing that his career had taken an unexpected turn today. From council loyalist to revolutionary accomplice in less than 24 hours. The old Zerl would have been horrified. But the old Zerl hadn't yet seen what humans were truly capable of, not their capacity for violence, which the council had feared, but their capacity for resilience, ingenuity, and strategic thinking that spanned decades. The day humanity's chains shattered was the day the galaxy truly began to understand them. And in understanding them, perhaps learn something important about itself. The real work was just beginning. But for the first time in 70 years, it would be done in daylight, not shadow. And that, Zerl decided, was worth whatever came next.